In the frozen Montana wilds, Jack Carter found a dying bobcat kitten, bringing it home against all odds. What followed was a bond that defied nature and changed his life forever. But what happened next will shock you. Let's go back to the beginning. In the stillness of the Montana hills, Jack Carter had never sought anything more than solitude. His ranch, with its sprawling fields of golden grass and rugged, snow-capped mountains in the distance, was the only world he'd ever known. It was a life bound by the rhythm of the seasons, the crackling warmth of a hearth at night, and the simple companionship of Max, his golden retriever. Max had been there since Jack was a boy, growing older with him, watching the world change around them while their bond only deepened. Max's eyes, though soft and loyal, were always alert, as if the dog understood that Jack's peace was fragile, built on the silent agreement of man and animal against the wild and untamed world outside. There was an unspoken trust between them, a shared understanding of quiet strength. The winter evening when Jack found Leo was no different from any other. The air was crisp, biting even, and the earth beneath his boots crunched like frozen glass. The hunt was a familiar routine, a way to fill the larder and keep his skills sharp. Yet the tracks that led him into the thick underbrush that evening weren't the ones of deer or elk, the usual prey. They were strange, almost out of place, and Jack felt an eerie pull to follow them. Max, with his usual enthusiasm, sniffed the air, urging Jack forward. They wound through the woods until the familiar hum of the wind died down, and there, lying limp and lifeless in a patch of snow, was something Jack had never expected to see. It wasn't the animal he'd been tracking. It was a wild bobcat, barely larger than a house cat, with fur that had been matted and frozen by the unforgiving cold. Its tiny form, barely alive, seemed as fragile as the snowflakes that drifted down from the dark sky. Jack's first instinct was to turn away, to continue on his path, but something stopped him. Max stood over the little creature, his warm breath visible in the frozen air, nudging the bobcat gently with his nose. Jack knelt beside it, his heart heavy with an unfamiliar pull. He had seen animals in distress before, but none that stirred this sense of protectiveness in him. Without a second thought, Jack scooped the kitten into his arms, feeling its small body tremble against the cold. It was barely conscious, and he wasn't sure it would make it through the night. But there was no question in his mind. He couldn't leave it there to die. He carried it back to the cabin where the fire crackled with warmth, and set about the delicate task of reviving it. He wrapped it in a soft blanket, placed it by the hearth, and sat silently, his eyes never leaving the fragile creature. Hours passed before Jack could even dare to hope. But just as the last of the night's shadows began to recede, the bobcat stirred. Its eyes fluttered open, weak but alive. In that moment, something shifted within Jack. The decision to keep Leo wasn't one born of logic. It was instinct, as if the universe had conspired to place the creature in his care. He didn't know what it would mean for his life, or if he was equipped to care for something so wild. But one thing was certain. He couldn't let go. And so, Leo stayed. In the weeks that followed, as the winds howled outside and the snow built drifts against the windows, the odd trio of Jack, Max, and Leo formed a family of sorts. Max, with his patient and protective nature, watched over Leo as the kitten grew stronger, though it never lost its wild edge. The bond between them was palpable. Max, the ever-watchful older brother, and Leo, the free-spirited wild child who seemed to walk between two worlds. Jack often marveled at how seamlessly they fit together, like pieces of a puzzle that had been waiting for the right time to snap into place. Leo, despite his wild roots, began to trust Jack and Max in ways that defied logic. The three of them were inseparable, bound by something deeper than just a need for survival. It was the beginning of a bond that would defy the expectations of nature and reshape Jack's world in ways he could never have imagined. As the seasons turned into years, Jack watched with a quiet sense of awe as Leo transformed from the frail, trembling kitten he had found on the snow-covered ground into a creature of untamed beauty. His coat, once soft and matted, had grown thick and lustrous, a striking blend of rich, tawny browns and deep shadows. His eyes, bright and piercing, held the secrets of the wild, and every movement he made seemed to carry the weight of centuries of instinct. Yet, despite the fierceness that ran through his veins, there was no mistaking the soft rhythm of his purr when he curled up next to Max, or the way he nuzzled Jack's hand for attention, much like the dog had done when he was a pup. Leo's wildness was never something Jack tried to tame. It was a part of him, a force that couldn't be subdued, only respected. In the mornings, Jack would often find him perched high on the fence posts, watching the world unfold beneath him with the quiet focus of a predator. Max, ever the calm companion, would be lying in the grass nearby, his tail flicking lazily, as if to say, "I've got this." It was a quiet understanding between the two, one that had developed over the years. Max had long ago accepted that Leo would never be a dog, not in the way he was. The Bobcat didn't want to be a part of Jack's world in the same way Max did. No, Leo was something different, something wild. But he had found a place in this world nonetheless, and that place was beside Jack. There were moments when Jack would catch himself staring at the two animals, one so deeply grounded in his loyalty to Jack, the other so deeply attuned to the earth and its rhythms, and wonder at the strange beauty of it all. Max, in his patient, easygoing manner, seemed to offer the kind of acceptance that Leo never would have found in the wild. The dog's presence was a grounding force, a reminder that even the fiercest hearts could learn to coexist with those who were different. And Leo, in turn, offered something to Max that Jack couldn't, a wildness that gave the dog a deeper understanding of the world beyond their little cabin. Together, they were a balance, each offering something to the other that they couldn't find on their own. But there was always a quiet undercurrent of unease in Jack's heart, a gnawing worry that never quite left him. Despite the comfort he found in watching them together, he couldn't shake the thought that Leo, in all his strength and independence, might one day decide the world outside was where he truly belonged. There were moments when Jack would see the flicker of something in Leo's eyes, a yearning for the hills beyond the ranch, the dark forests where he had once roamed freely, and it would remind him of the fragile nature of their bond. Leo wasn't a domesticated animal, and Jack had no illusions that he could keep him locked in this world forever. But every time Jack's mind wandered to the thought of letting Leo go, the Bobcat would remind him of the connection they shared. One winter evening, as the snow fell thick and silent, Jack stood at the door of the cabin, watching as Leo disappeared into the trees. His heart ached at the thought of him leaving, but he knew it was only a matter of time before the Bobcat would return. And sure enough, after what felt like hours, Leo's silhouette emerged from the snow, his eyes glowing with the sharp clarity of the wild. He padded silently toward Jack, who knelt down to greet him, the familiar weight of the Bobcat's presence grounding him in a way nothing else could. Leo curled up at Jack's feet, his fur warm against the cold earth, and Jack's heart swelled with the understanding that no matter where Leo's instincts took him, no matter how far he roamed, he would always return. The wild and the domesticated, it seemed, were not enemies. They were two halves of something whole. And in that moment, Jack realized that perhaps they were all exactly where they needed to be. The thunderstorm came on fast, an angry roar that seemed to tear at the sky, turning the midday sun into an eerie, oppressive darkness. Jack had been out in the fields, checking the cattle, when the first cracks of thunder split the air. He hadn't expected the storm to be so fierce, but the wind picked up quickly, gusting like a furious force, whipping at his coat and stinging his face with rain. The cattle, already jittery from the sudden drop in pressure, scattered, their lowing lost in the roar of the storm. Jack kicked his horse's sides, urging the animal to focus, but the wind was relentless, and the horse, already spooked by the darkening sky, reared up in panic. Before Jack could react, the horse bucked him off, sending him crashing to the wet earth. The world spun as he hit the ground, a sharp pain shooting up his leg. He gasped, struggling to push himself up, but the weight of a fallen tree branch pinned him to the mud. He tried to free his leg, but the rain and the wind made it hard to think clearly, let alone move. His voice was swallowed by the storm as he called out, but no one could hear him. He could feel the cold creeping in, his breath shallow as he fought against the growing panic. His mind raced, running through the possibilities, none of them good. The ranch was miles from town, and the storm was too fierce for anyone to reach him in time. His thoughts turned darker as he realized how alone he truly was in that moment, the heavy weight of the storm and his injury pressing down on him. Just when Jack thought he might be too far gone, a sound cut through the chaos. The rustling of brush, soft at first, then louder as something approached. His heart skipped a beat. Could it be Max? He tried to call out again, but his voice was a faint rasp, lost in the tempest. He was too disoriented to make sense of the shadow emerging through the rain. But as it came closer, Jack's breath caught in his throat. There, moving with a fluid grace that defied the storm's fury, was Leo. The Bobcat. His Bobcat. Leo moved with a fierce urgency, his golden eyes locked onto Jack as he approached, undeterred by the storm. With the precision of a hunter, Leo planted his paws on the fallen branch and used his sharp claws to pry it away from Jack's leg. Jack's mind struggled to make sense of it. This wild creature, this being born of the untamed wilderness, was here, risking its own safety to help him. Leo's movements were swift and calculated, each action with a singular purpose: to get Jack free. The Bobcat nudged him with surprising gentleness, as if urging him to move, to find safety. For a moment, Jack felt as though time had stopped. The chaos of the storm, the howl of the wind, all faded away. In that singular moment, Leo's actions spoke volumes. He wasn't just an animal Jack had saved. He was family. Max, barking frantically from a distance, added to the scene's surrealism. His loyal presence was a comforting reminder of the life Jack had built, the bond they shared. Yet it was Leo, the wild one, the outsider, who had taken the first step, who had braved the storm to come to his rescue. As Jack, weakened and trembling, allowed Leo to guide him to safety, he couldn't help but marvel at the raw, unspoken truth unfolding before him. The bond between them wasn't just a matter of survival. It was a deep, unbreakable connection, something forged in the fire of necessity, but tempered with an unspoken trust that had been built over years. Jack's leg throbbed with pain, but he hardly noticed. What mattered was that Leo, this creature that should have belonged to the wild, had chosen him. The realization hit him with a weight he hadn't expected. Family wasn't defined by blood. It was shaped by loyalty, by the silent promises made when words weren't needed. It was about who stood by you when everything else was falling apart. And Leo had chosen to stand by him, just like Max. As they finally made their way to the cabin, with Max by Jack's side, Leo remained close, his presence a steady force in the storm's aftermath. The world outside might have been wild and unpredictable, but in that moment, Jack realized the wildness had found a place within him. The storm, the pain, and the uncertainty were all part of a larger story, one that had been unfolding quietly, one bond at a time. And in that story, there was no question. Leo, his bobcat, had chosen him. The light of the fading sun cast long shadows across the fields, its orange hue settling on the tops of the distant hills, painting everything it touched in hues of fire and gold. Jack stood at the edge of the ranch, leaning against the weathered wooden fence, watching the world unfold around him. The wind stirred the grass in a rhythmic dance, and the steady hum of life in the valley, birds calling, cattle grazing, trees whispering in the breeze, seemed to speak to something deep within him, a quiet pulse that was now in tune with the land he had known his entire life. The vastness of the Montana plains stretched before him, but it was no longer just land. It was a canvas, filled with the stories of his past, the scars of his choices, and the bond he now shared with the creatures who had, in their own way, become his family. Leo padded softly beside him, his wild eyes always alert, scanning the horizon with the natural precision of a hunter. Max, older now, had slowed, but he remained close by, his once quick steps now a little more deliberate, his muzzle dusted with gray. Together, the three of them were a quiet symbol of harmony, an unspoken understanding between them that went beyond the simplicity of their actions. Max, the loyal dog who had been Jack's constant companion since childhood, was no longer the young pup he had once been, but he had grown wise with age, his loyalty still as strong as ever. And Leo, the untamable bobcat who had once been a helpless kitten, now walked beside him like a living reminder of the raw power and beauty of nature, a creature that could not be tamed, only respected. There was something profound in watching the two animals together, side by side, a dog and a wild creature that had never belonged to the world of men. Yet here they were, companions. The connection between them was no longer just a matter of necessity. It was a quiet testament to the nature of love, to the unexpected ways in which the world could weave lives together. Jack had always known that his life would be shaped by the land, but he had never expected it to be shaped by a bobcat, by an animal who should have been lost to the wild, to a life he had no claim to. Yet here Leo was, choosing Jack over the wilderness, choosing this life, this quiet existence in the hills. And in doing so, Leo had taught Jack something he hadn't known he needed to learn. Max had always been Jack's protector, his companion, the one who kept him grounded, who reminded him that there was still warmth in a cold world. But Leo, with his untamed nature, had shown Jack a different side of loyalty, one that was earned not through dependence, but through mutual respect. It wasn't about possession. It wasn't about ownership. It was a shared existence, a bond that transcended species, that transcended everything Jack had ever understood about what it meant to belong. Leo had never been a creature of comfort. He had never been domesticated. He had chosen this life, this family, and in doing so had changed the very definition of what it meant to be family. Jack's thoughts lingered on the simplicity of it all, the way the two animals, so different in nature, had found common ground. He had once feared that Leo's wildness would always keep him apart, would always be something he couldn't fully understand. But now, as he watched Leo and Max lie beneath the stars, their breathing in sync with the rhythm of the earth, Jack realized that the wild and the domestic didn't need to be separate. They could coexist. They had found their place together. And it was in that place that Jack found his peace. The stillness of the evening was broken only by the soft rustle of grass in the wind and the quiet, contented sounds of Leo and Max, each of them finding comfort in the other's presence. Jack's heart swelled with a deep, unspoken gratitude. He hadn't saved Leo. Leo had saved him in a way he hadn't even known he needed saving. And in return, Max had taught Leo the meaning of belonging, the meaning of home. In that moment, with the stars rising above them and the world stretching wide and endless before him, Jack knew that no matter what the future held, no matter where life took him, he would never be alone again. The wild had become his family, and in its presence he had found a deeper understanding of love, of loyalty, and of the simple truth that sometimes the most unlikely of bonds are the ones that save us.